All right. Thanks everyone for joining. Today, Stacey Abate and Emily Newton are joining us to talk about intergenerational approaches to grants. Both Stacey and Emily have extensive experience in the nonprofit sector and are very involved with the Grant Professionals Association New Jersey chapter. So thank you both for joining, and I will turn it over to you.
Thank you. Um, Thank you for having us. Emily and I are both grants professionals. We have been for different amounts of time, which we'll get into. And one of the reasons we created this presentation, Emily's going to start screen sharing, is that we are not of the same generation, but we work really well together. And so we started wondering if we are just that fantastic, or if there was some way we could actually look at this kind of intergenerational collaboration, because there's quite a diverse, group of people in the workspace right now. So that's where we came from. Emily, if you want to go to the next slide, I'll
Yes.
just say a bit about me and then I'll turn it over to you. So I've been doing grants since like the dawn of time, or 1997. I then started teaching at Rutgers, which is also my alma mater, in 2016. And that's when I met Emily. Emily at the time was a student there. Em?
And when I took Stacy's class, I was coming back from time off of school and kind of accidentally fell into the class, but then started an internship at Prevention Links, which is where I still work. I started working in a peer role there and moved into a grants role in 2020, and I'm now the Chief Development Officer. So I do their grants, their fundraising, marketing, and communications.
And one thing I would say is that I do teach this grant writing class at Rutgers, and that is my alma mater, but back in the day, that was not a class. Most people my age, and we'll talk about the generations, I am firmly Gen X, and most people my age didn't do this on purpose. We sort of thought we were going to do something else, and one thing led to another, and somebody had to write it, and we were somebody. So whereas Emily sort of had a clearer and a shorter career path, I like to say that she is the youngest chief development officer in the state of New Jersey, only because nobody has ever proven me wrong. So I'm sticking with it. So our paths were quite different, right? Like I was going to be a teacher, and I was for like 2 minutes, and then yeah, like I said, one thing led to another. Whereas Emily's path has been, to me, Emily, you could disagree. It seems a little bit more linear. Like you took my class and found a clear pathway. So that's
Yeah,
fantastic. Go ahead.
much more focused once I took your class for sure.
Thank you. Yep.
So there's five generations in the workplace right now: Gen Z, which is the youngest, Millennial, Gen X, Baby Boomers, and Silent Generation, which when we did our survey, we actually got a respondent in the Silent Generation that we were really excited about. So this is generally what the workforce looks like. It's a bell curve. So right now, like Gen X is the most high population in the workplace right now. And it's starting to shift towards Millennial and Gen Z as we get, because they're getting I have nieces in Gen Z who are they're getting older, and I'm like, now you're part of the workplace, and I have to change my presentation to include
Gen
the
Alpha.
alpha, the one younger than them.
Yeah.
So the next few slides we're going to go over just generalized traits about these, and we want to acknowledge these are not like necessarily truths or facts, just general information about each generation to give context to the survey that we did.
Yeah. And Emily mentioned a survey. We did this nationwide survey, and we'll talk about how many people responded. We didn't know how many silent generation. I know I still like encounter people who identify as such. So we wanted to be sure to include as many people as possible. But as Emily mentioned, we did this survey a year ago. If we did it again now, or by the time we do it again, maybe over the next year, we will definitely have to include the alphas. So go ahead. You want to tell us about the silent generation?
Yeah, so silent generation is generally coined as dependable, traditional, loyal. They have lived through, they were shaped by large, like World War II and Great Depression, these huge worldwide events. They view work as an obligation. They typically have a slow and steady career, and they stay in place. They value authority. They're motivated by respect and recognition in the workplace and owning their own homes. You want to do this one?
Yeah, sure. The boomers are, they're still, Emily mentioned that bell curve, but there's still quite a lot of baby boomers still working, approaching retirement, or maybe, about to retire. But they were shaped, they are competitive, team-oriented, and dedicated. Many of them have also been with their organizations for a very long time. They're really excel at teamwork. They value job security. Work is expected, and they're loyal to their employer still.
I'll let you do this one and then I'll do
Okay,
the
thanks.
last one.
Yep. So, like I said, Gen X, independent for sure, flexible, resourceful. We were the generation that kind of raised ourselves, latchkey kids. Good luck to you. Nobody knew where you were from the hours of 3 to 6. Be home by before it gets dark, kind of thing. We're all still working. I would like to retire. We may never retire. Life is uncertain, but there are the most of us right now just because of age.
Next is millennials. This is the first generation that really had tech as part of their childhood and growing up. They had internet access. They were introduced to a lot more diversity. They value meaningful work, and they change jobs very often. They change careers. They view work as something that's necessary, but they don't necessarily stay loyal to a company like other generations. And this cutoff makes me sad because I actually fall into Generation Z. And this generation is incredibly tech dependent. We grew up with computers from the time that we were very young. It's something that, like, instead of learning cursive in school, we learned how to type on computers. Global warming, technology access, and the Great Recession has kind of shaped our view on the workplace, but we're motivated by economic stability and also the ability to innovate and create in spaces. And this is another generation that often, I'm unlike most people in my generation, they will either do career multitasking, which is when they're pursuing multiple careers at once. Oftentimes, at least what I've seen in this generation, it looks like someone having a full-time job and also pursuing something like um, Instagram or TikTok influencer as a secondary career, and they change jobs often. Work is always evolving, so they're jumping to the next thing.
And we should say these aren't perfect, right? Lots of people are on the cusp of one or the other, or have traits. I'll ac- speak. Em, do you want to say like Emily's more of a zillennial and that she kind of embodies
Yeah.
traits from both? So they're not, it's not a perfect, but everybody, when we get into the survey, was asked to self-select what do you most identify with?
Yes. And most people actually did give open-ended responses that they felt
They
somewhere
did.
in between two of them. So, like Stacey said, we did this study because the two of us work so well together, and especially as things like AI have become more prevalent for grant writers, or different things that are changing in policies, things that like I've had to reach out to Stacey and be like, how do I how do I navigate this new dumb grant system that they created, right? We lean on each other very heavily. And we wondered if the collaboration between us, like she said, was just because the two of us are wonderful, or if there's really something that each of our generations bring as a strength, that kind of coincide very well together. So we did a survey of grant professionals.
And we also thought it would be helpful because at this point, I'm sure we've all been asked to take some type of a Myers-Briggs or Enneagram, like some way of identifying people's sort of strengths, weaknesses, personality traits in the workplace. So we thought we would dig deeper into this generational thing. And this is what we found. We, as members of grant professionals, we have access. One of the things that being a GPA member gives us is access to what they call the grant zone. It's like our online forum, and we can post questions in there, and that's where we posted our survey. And so, and it goes, there's chapters throughout the country. So we got 232 responses, and that is how we sorted them. Emily mentioned there was quite a few, but I'm in the middle of. But this is absolutely how it broke out once we really went into, okay, well, what year are you? And broke them into all these different generations. And there's that bell curve that Emily mentioned as well, with like the most of us as Gen X, the most of these respondents, rather.
Yeah. I think we even asked the question of what year was someone born, because I was born in
Mhm.
1998, which is right in the cusp between millennial and Gen Z. And if I was filling out this survey, I probably also would have made a comment of like, oh,
Mhm.
technically I'm Gen Z according to the brackets you gave. But I do think we asked for birth year so that we were able to separate people even though they felt like they were on the cusp.
Yep. which was a good idea. We vastly underestimated the amount of write-ins we would get. So,
Yeah, it's severely underestimated. So then we asked how many years someone has been in the grant profession. A majority have been somewhere between like 1 to 10 years is where most of them fall in the bottom two slices there. Um, and the other half have been 10 plus years. So it was really split nearly 50-50 of people who were kind of new to the profession and people who had been there for a decade or more.
right, because while I've been doing this for like 28 years, a lot of people my age haven't, right? For some, this was a second career, or they did it for a while and then now do something slightly different. So this wasn't exactly the same as, you know, generational. This was just how long have you been doing grants?
And then we asked what their role was in the grant profession. So a majority were grant writers, and then others were grant managers, senior grant staff, some type of executive, and then the other category, there was all different types of things. There were evaluators, there were um, like researchers, there were people who probably fell into one of these categories, but their title didn't quite match the language that we used. So the others, the write-ins were really interesting too.
And a lot of people, like Emily mentioned, she doesn't just do grants, she also does a lot of fundraising. So that was some of the other category as well.
Yes. Yeah, that they had like fundraising titles.
Yeah.
So then we asked when we were doing this presentation, and we can ask all of you to participate here with us, what does intergenerational collaboration look like in your workplace?
And I should have said that we did this presentation originally at our national conference last fall, where all the grants people come together, and we had a really robust conversation. This is a little bit of a smaller group. So Emily is right. We would love to hear from you. Thank you for joining us. What does intergenerational collaboration look like in your workplaces? Is it as diverse as ours? I'm with RWJ Barnabas Health, so my workplace is really big. But not everybody, Emily's with a smaller nonprofit, but not. So where are you all from? We would love to hear from you. Heather or Tori or Denise or Brielle.
I can give an example too. Oh, go ahead, Priya.
I was just going to say that we have an extraordinarily small staff, uh, 5 people, and we have 3 different generations. So, it's pretty spread out.
I think that's an asset. I have a side project that's one of a side consulting project, and all of the principals we're all Gen X, and so we all have the same strengths and weaknesses. It would be an asset to us to have some diversity.
Hi, I'm Gio. I'm at New Jersey Conservation Foundation. We have mostly millennial and up. I don't think we have anyone who's younger than a millennial at this time. But I mean, I do think we all have different strengths and we all work well together. We've got like 30 people total.
Thank you.
That's great.
Heather or Denise?
Yeah, I think we have mostly millennials, but some of our program staff are Gen Z and they help with like the grant reports because they're doing it, but it's definitely like heavily millennial.
Great, thank you.
I'm Tori,
Hi.
Sauerland Conservancy. Very similarly to Brielle, we're a paid staff of 4, and we have 3 different generations represented on our team.
Oh, that's great. Thank you. You want to go to the next slide?
So the next question we asked was on a scale of 1 to 5 to rate the work-life balance, and this is both the average and the most common response of each generation. What surprised me most here, remember Silent Generation only had one response, so it's heavily weighted by only one person's opinion. Um, but I had expected almost like for Gen Z to have the best work-life balance and then it kind of go down little by little for each generation because of the way that older generations view work and that it's necessary and they have to do it for economic stability. But the baby boomers surprised me. They had a pretty high average across their
And
responses.
we should say one is terrible and five was great.
Yes, yeah.
That seems very subjective, though, also. You know,
Correct. Well,
somebody's,
all these questions are subjective, right?
yes,
And your
somebody's,
work-life balance might be terrible today, but once I clear these deadlines, maybe next month I might feel differently.
Exactly. Yeah.
and also expectations about what is a good work-life balance, which is really interesting.
Hmm.
Next, we asked what most negatively impacts your work-life balance. And this one was
So
hilarious
interesting.
because across all of the generations, collaborating with others was like the first and foremost worst part of being a grants professional, that affected their work-life balance. And the second for most of the generations was the competing deadlines, how there's deadlines over deadlines over deadlines. So it was really interesting for us that these came up one and two across all of the generations, what made us think that maybe it's more related to the work that we do and less related to the generation that someone's in. And then the third one, the thing that's interesting for me here is that grant portals was the third reason for Gen Z. And the reason why that's interesting to me is because they're one of the more tech savvy generations. So for grant portals to kind of throw them off, it was interesting to find there.
I could see that making sense though, because some of the grant portals were built like they're so antiquated in such a way that they're not logical. It doesn't make any sense. Like
Precise.
I've had somewhere it'll give you an error and it won't tell you what page the error's on, and you can spend all of this time like attempting to figure it out. And I think that could be really frustrating when you're used to technology working well.
Thank you.
Yes.
And that's what I was going to say is that the young people, I think, yes, they're more tech savvy, but the porters were built by older people who are not. Mhm.
Yes, and they don't make sense.
And I just wanted to clarify that collaboration with others, like clearly it's people stressing out people, but it tended to be in the write-ins with where there was some explanation. It's not so much like each other, like it's not like Emily would stress me out. It's me, like waiting for finance or waiting for the program people or waiting for stuff that's out of my control, like to get back to me.
Yes. Yeah. Next, we asked them to rate a one being the lowest, five being like the most open to, rating their ease of accepting new technologies. And again, this one surprised me. This was a lot higher than I expected across all of the generations. And Gen Z was a little bit low for what I expected. Um, Even though the most common response was five, there were quite a few Gen Zs who were like, no, absolutely not. I don't want new technology.
And again, we're compelled to point out that our rock star silent generation is one woman. Mhm.
Yes, she's amazing.
Yes, clearly love and life.
Next, we asked how much do you integrate the use of AI technology in your grants process? So this is a really hot topic in grants and fundraising right now, and it's something we also present on. So we asked, is it never, occasionally, often, or always that you're using generative AI? Again, silent generation is kind of our outlier here. But it didn't surprise me that only Gen Z had like a pretty high always option. But some of these percentages, like occasionally being pretty high for baby boomers and Gen X and millennial, all higher than Gen Z, was surprising that there are older generations like taking use of these resources that exist now.
And again, this was last summer. I would be willing to bet that if we did this exact same question today, they would all be higher.
Yeah. Next, we asked how do you use generative AI the most often? For silent generation, understanding the proposed program, not necessarily for composing the narrative. Baby boomers generally talked about using it for final review and editing, for word count, for program titles. Gen X for initial idea generation, word count, rewriting narratives that were already written, and titles. Millennials using it to summarize NOFO information, titles, idea generation, and sources. And Gen Z, more sophisticated language, writer's block, outlining information, and initial brain dump. So this was something we asked people just to write in. And it was interesting, some of the things that we had come across, even when people were suggesting there were quite a few millennials that wrote in summarizing NOFO information. Never had I ever thought to use AI like that, and now I do it all the time after doing this survey.
And thinking about how you self-identify, do you agree with this? Or like I am, like I said, Gen X, and that is still pretty much how I would use it. And I might also say the opposite, whereas Gen Z says more sophisticated language, sometimes I ask it for simpler language.
Yeah, that's one of the biggest ways we use it in marketing is having it kind of take the grant language that we use in narratives and help us turn it into community-friendly language that's more palatable to the participants we're serving, as
Hmm.
opposed to the language we use when we're talking to funders.
Or for a press release announcing the award.
Yes. Yeah, there's lots of ways we use AI. Next, we asked, how do you most prefer to collaborate? So we asked them, is it virtual? Is it in person, email, or by phone? And this one, the thing that shocked me about this one is that Gen Z had such a high percentage of phone and in person. I expected them to strictly be virtual and email because that's how I prefer to communicate and collaborate with people. Um, and it surprised me that the in-person number was so low for baby boomers and even for millennials. But I think one of the things we talked about at the conference was this is likely due to COVID, that as people learned that they could work from home and do their jobs entirely remote, they were less motivated to be in the office, whereas at one time they saw it as part of their job to be in the office. Then we asked, where do you most prefer to work? Again, hybrid, entirely remote, or in the office. And this is one that I believe the hybrid numbers, or at least we theorized, that the hybrid numbers were higher here because this was a post-COVID survey and people saw that they could kind of strike a balance between being in the office and getting things done at home as well. Then we asked, when completing an application, which element was your favorite? And we didn't see a lot of like consistency across the board for this one. Program design was certainly one of the highest. I think it's funny that Gen Z liked goals and objectives first. That is the thing that I start with as well before I start to build out the program design. It's just like an analytical way that I think about tackling these tasks. Then for the second reason, their second most favorite part, needs assessment, is what came up the most, followed by program design. And then for the third reason, this is where most of the generations chose goals and objectives, and Gen Z chose the needs assessment, kind of the research part of grants.
I really think this is just very personal
Yeah,
because you're right. It's best to start with the goals so you can design the project around it. But the question was, what is your favorite? So,
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, the full survey was really objective. We were trying to dig into, do the generations view things personally differently across. Then we asked what their least favorite part was. Most people agree that it's the budget, the logic models, the MOUs, letters of support. Again, the MOUs, the budget, even sometimes the logic model, but more so the letters of support and the budget. You're relying on other people to get information back to you, that you can't necessarily control how quickly they're getting it back to you. So it made a lot of sense to us why these came up. You want to take this, Stacey? Like what?
How can we use this
How can
data?
we do this?
Is
Yeah.
yeah. So, and as I mentioned earlier, I think it's just sort of useful to keep in mind in the same way if you know, with some of your coworkers what their like triggers are and you're trying to accommodate them or what their work style is or like all right, this person I have got to get on the phone, like they're never going to respond to an email. So that is how we hoped that we could use this data, was just to kind of raise awareness and like be a little understanding if somebody older or younger than you has to either be in person or has to have that, know how you can reach out to people, is how we thought we could use it. Uh, Emily, did I miss anything?
No, I don't think so. We did this survey really to see if we were the odd men out, and I think one of the biggest things we took away from it is that we all bring different strengths, but also there's some things in this field of grant writing that just unify us across the board, that will always rely on just like standards set by organizations like GPA rather than like necessarily experience or generational strengths. And the next slide is just questions. So I'm going to stop sharing so that you guys can talk to us about how can this data be useful and do you have any questions for us?
Please.
Ladies,
Hey,
I'm sorry I
Denise.
did have to jump off there because, of course, he did show up. Um, but I think anytime I see information about, communication across generations, it's always helpful for me to kind of say, oh, I think that person would prefer me to email them as opposed to call them, or something along those lines. So I think it does match up really well with what you just presented. So thank
Thank
you.
you. And we're sort of over connected these days, right? Like everybody's, texting all the time, or Slack or Teams or whatever your organization uses. And so I do think it is helpful to just keep that in mind. Like my boss at RWJ Barnabas Health is very clearly a baby boomer, and she much prefers a phone call. She's like, enough with the email. I cannot anymore. Just call me when you need something.
Whereas I'm a boomer and I'd rather you email me because if we get on
Correct.
the phone, it's going to take longer.
Fair enough. Right. I mean, these aren't hard and fast rules, right?
I think one of the things that also like sparked our wanting to do this survey is Stacey, you and I have very different bosses that come from very different. I have a millennial boss, um, and like she prefers that I text her rather than email or call. She's always like, just text me. I'm in a meeting. Like, just text me and I'll be able to answer you. Um, whereas there's not a lot of other bosses. There's one executive on our team that prefers only phone calls. He will not answer emails. He'll read them and he'll say he read them in a meeting, but he will not respond to them.
Is he older, Emily?
Yes, yes.
I think for us, it's such a mix. I tend to send the email, follow up with a phone call, and then circle back with a text. And of course, that's if I know somebody has a strong preference for one or the other, trying to respect that, and also trying to, follow up and, connect in all the ways to try and move things forward. You know.
In all the ways, Kate, is the key, Brielle, in that we're the grants people, right? If we're whoever's going to click submit, like that's us, like that deadline is on us. So regardless of what generation we may or our communication style we may prefer, we're going to have to be flexible with all of them, which is, I think, the other thing we wanted to kind of examine and point out, that the more we can understand about all of these different communication styles and collaboration preferences, the better we can do our jobs.
I think one of the other things this survey taught me or just made me more mindful of on the team that I work on, there's a lot of us who are younger. So I think our executive team is made up of me, who's a Gen Z, two millennials, one boomer, and maybe one Gen X. I'm not quite sure. Maybe two. 2 Gen X, 1 Boomer. And one of the things, like silly things that I could start to teach them that I had just like because I grew up with technology information that lived in my brain that didn't live in some of theirs. Like we do a virtual executive meeting, and whoever is at the office typically sets up like the laptop and gets it all connected. And that used to be my job, and now I work primarily remote. So before I left, I made sure to pull aside some of the executives to show them exactly how to do it, and like write in an email step-by-step instructions so that they weren't like stuck or feeling like they couldn't get something done. So I found different ways, or like while we're on the executive meeting, I'll be on Chat GPT, like, oh, we're talking about this kind of policy, give me some suggestions. And boom, it's right there. And everyone's like, wow. And I just show them how to use it little by little. And they do things like that too, of sharing their experience at other organizations and things, experience that I don't have.
Anybody else? Think of some way we can integrate this into our work because we're all doing this work. I would love it. Back to Gio's point earlier, if some of the younger people would take over the portal creation because they are clunky. And antiquated was a very good word. Thank you. Don, I see that you unmuted and you had a good point also earlier in the chat. I don't know if people saw, but that older working professionals have constantly been adapting to new stuff. Like there was a time when we did not have cell phones or the internet. Like I was, my first grants job, all the partners had to bring me their piece on floppy disks, and then I had to try and figure out ways to integrate it. And I used to have to go to the actual post office to mail, a box full of an original plus 5 copies to DC by a certain date. Like, so I kind of don't miss that. We have been adapting all of the time. And yes, portals are clunky, but when they work, they are so much easier. Mhm.
Yeah, I think it's true. It's kind of like just as in college, learning is about learning how to learn, and working and adapting to change over decades is learning to adapt to future changes. So people may gripe about it, but ultimately, they get on the program and realize it's part of doing the job. And just as a cusp Gen X boomer myself, I kind of like. I've just been very curious about AI. So I feel like there are no dumb questions. Nobody's really watching, so you can ask away, even about, terminology or just so many different ways you can use AI. And it's just, to play with it and use it on a regular basis opens so many different doors that, weren't apparent in the beginning.
Oh, for sure. Emily mentioned we do presentations on AI as well, and it's changing so rapidly. I mean, just so rapidly. It's just astonishing.
As a person who is a one-person office, um, I like the fact that in your survey people talked about the letters of support, because I'm filling out the grant, I'm getting all the information, and I may be writing a grant to support a park commission program that another staff person here runs. So I have to get kind of the core of what that program is so that I can create the grant. But at the same time, I'm kind of trying to track down my community partners to say, hey, I know it's last minute, but I've got this deadline in 2 weeks. Can you get me a letter of support? So I think that challenges, but I know we're not talking really about AI and Chat GPT, but I want to piggyback real quick on what Don just said. One of the new programs that the Park Alliance has is to support low-income schools to come to our field trips. And I used ChatGPT to come up with a couple of names of the program, and we actually did pick one of the ones. It's Journey to Learning, which is one of the ones that ChatGPT gave us, and that's what we decided to go with. So it can definitely save you some time. Just put in that information and see what it comes up with. Might not always like it, but We like Journey to
I think
Learning,
that's a
so
great use of
we
it.
kept it.
Yeah, it's a hot topic in the GPA forums because we're trying to figure out how to harness it for the good.
Yep.
Um, I think there's a lot to be concerned about, but there are certainly tons of benefits as well.
Yeah, we've been trying to tell people to just verify everything that they get out of it. I mean, a title of a program's different,
Mhm.
but writing a letter or writing something up, um, it's got built-in biases. It's got whatever's been fed into it is what it's going to feed back. So we want to make sure everybody just verifies everything that they get out of it before using it.
And it will be different. As I mentioned, I teach at Rutgers, and I can guarantee that one of the very first questions I'm going to get is, can we use it to write our papers? That will be the very, very, like on the first night, it'll be one of the first questions.
Mm-hmm. I taught at Kane for a while, and it, not Chat GPT, but kind of the research stuff. And after a while, I could kind of tell
Well, you can tell.
because I knew the student's reading style. And suddenly
Mhm.
I'm getting a paragraph or two that I'm like, no.
And
I think
even
that came off the internet.
the universities haven't quite figured it out, how to like both embrace, like Rutgers has a Center for AI Studies and whatever. But wait, you can't actually use it in your paper. That's an academic integrity violation.
Mhm.
So like, give me some guidance as faculty. I would appreciate that. But it's a very unsettled area.
Changing so rapidly.
Oh my God, astonishingly.
It's even
And
unsettled between funders of like if they
Yes.
accept it and can you use it and will they
Mhm.
scan for it, and it's different across every single one.
Correct.
unfortunately, our meeting is going to end in about 30 seconds. So I wanted to just
Thank
say
you.
thank you both for being here with the Environmental Fundraisers Gathering and sharing this valuable data and knowledge with us all. So
Thank you for having us. I think our contact information is on the slides, or Braille will be happy to share it if you have any follow-up questions. But thank you very much for spending some time with us this afternoon.